Hi, I'm Brittany Knudsen from R&R by Design, and today I'm going to show you how to take your kitchen cabinets, whether they're dark, maybe they're wood, dark finish, or maybe they're builder grade with a paint finish, and show you how to transform them into this beautiful milk paint Gustavian 18th century type finish like you see in Eloquence. So to use clean slate, all you need is a lint-free rag. You just pour it off into your lint-free rag, and the nice thing about this is you don't have to rinse it off like you do with TSP or those degreasers. So once you have it on your rag, you're just going to clean your wood like so. Now, for the base coat, we absolutely could have used one-step paint, maybe Derby, for example, or Windsor. Those are more of a browns. But I wanted to show you a way to get that beautiful golden oak or pine color underneath those layers, especially when you're dealing with those blue grays. Those colors just look so beautiful and more of the Gustavian provincial feel when you have it layered under the milk paint layers. We only need 2 milk paint colors. The first one, Venetian brown. Venetian brown isn't your regular brown like a Windsor or Derby color. This is a very soft, organic brown, almost like an umber color. Now, when you take that and you add a little Tuscany in the summer, which is a nice golden yellow. So when you take the golden yellow and we mix it with the Venetian brown, we are going to get this beautiful golden oak color. Now, to get it to stick to our cabinets, because remember, not everybody's going to have raw wood, and sometimes we're going to be going over wood that has existing finishes. We are going to use Toscana milk paint binder. This is the product I feel is underused or maybe not completely understood on how to use it or when to use it. So since we want that base layer to be the last layer that you see when we distress it back, this is the perfect choice. Now we're ready to make our base coat, our nice wood tones, and I'll show you how to mix that. The first thing we want to do is to add our warm water. So here I have 1/3 cup of the Venetian brown and 1/3 cup of Tuscany in the summer. So what I did was I have 2/3 cup of warm water because your water needs to be also equal to the amount of powdered milk paint. Now, if you're doing large batches for a big piece of furniture, or you're going to want to make a large batch because you don't want to have to remake the same color more than once or it'll look off and it won't match. So to do large batches, this is what I recommend, and this is my KitchenAid blender wand. You don't need this specific brand, but any blender wand, see with these blades right here, not the whisk blenders, but the blades. These are the ones that are really good for breaking down and making large batches of milk paint. Now, if you're just doing a smaller batch, let's say for your samples or for a small piece of furniture, then of course you could mix this by hand with a spoon. So and we'll blend this up. If you get foam and you do have the blender wand like I'm doing here, what I like to do is just hover it over where the foam is and then press the button to get the blades moving so it breaks up the foam, just like this. And you just break up all of that foam on the top there. You just want to shake up your milk paint binder. And it may make your wet milk paint look a bit lighter, but don't worry. Toscana milk paint will dry transparent and clear by itself. So once the milk paint is dry, you won't tell a difference between if you had added it or not added it. So now we are going to let that rest 2 hours, Minimum overnight is best. Now that we have our base color made and resting, it's time to make our color layers. And we're going to be making, the primary color is going to be this beautiful blay, I call it blay green, but it's blue gray with a little hint of green. So to mix this color, we're going to use 1 part Amalfi Coast to 1 part Venetian brown. That will give us this beautiful blue gray you see right here. And so I have 1 part blue. We'll just add it into our 1 part Venetian brown here. And although you see me use the blender stick when I did the base coat, that golden oak color, I wanted to show you how to do it by hand just in case you wanted to mix it by hand. Maybe you don't want to do a stick blender. Maybe it's a smaller project that doesn't require using a stick blender. So it is possible to do this all by hand. It's definitely an art, not a science. So you see this beautiful color that's happening. See this beautiful blue-gray as we mix these complementary colors together. So now we're going to add our water, which is 1 part water to 1 part powdered milk paint. See how much darker that gets once we add the water? Now don't let this color scare you. Just like maybe when we make the that golden oak color by mixing the yellow and the brown, that is a lot darker wet than it's going to be when it dries down. So, and even after we wax it, it's going to be a tad bit darker than what it looks like dry like this, but it won't be nearly as dark as you're seeing when it's completely wet. And now we're going to make our 3rd color, which is basically the same exact color we just made, this nice blue-gray, but it's going to be a shade lighter. And how we're going to do that is we're going to do 1 part Amalfi Coast, 1 part Venetian brown again, but now we are going to add in white. And that's going to be 1 part Strasbourg white. So 1 part Amalfi Coast, 1 part Venetian brown, 1 part Strasbourg white. And we'll add that together so you can see the difference in color. And you'll see it's the same beautiful blue-gray, but it's going to be a shade lighter than we just made. See that? You see how it's that beautiful blue-gray, but lighter than it was before? And this is going to look beautiful when it's layered under each other because it gives it that depth, that texture, like the paint was painted on and the sun almost bleached it or lightened it, but then other factors maybe darkened it, like it oxidized. Now we're going to make what we just made in the previous 2 colors, but we're going to make it another shade lighter. And how we do that for our 3rd shade of this beautiful blue-gray is 1 part Amalfi Coast, again 1 part Venetian brown, and this time 2 parts Strasbourg white, and that will again give us our blue-gray, but an even lighter shade of our blue-gray. Now that we've let our milk paint rest long enough for it to all dissolve, here is the first base layer, our wood tone. And if you notice there's no foam on the top, is because of the milk paint binder. One thing you'll notice is it makes the milk paint a lot more smooth, kind of thickens it up a little bit, but we still need to agitate that. We're going to start painting our base layer. With milk paint, some people use synthetic brushes. I honestly think the chip brush is your best brush choice to use. And the reason for that is milk paint is, it just works better with natural hairs than synthetic hairs. So like boar bristle from a chip brush would be perfect. So we're just going to brush it on, agitate our paint, brush it on. Remember, just like you're doing any other milk paint layer, not too heavy. We don't want any puddled up. It does seem a little transparent at first, but when it dries, it's going to be a lot more opaque. Don't forget your edges. You're just going to paint that on just like so. And remember, always go with the grain or if you can't see the grain, where the grain would be if it was made of wood. So say left to right this way and up to down this way. And we're just going to paint this on. And long strokes so we don't have brush strokes. And if any puddles up in these little recessed areas, just use your brush to kind of work it outwards. And you'll notice a big difference. If you've painted with milk paint, you are going to notice a difference when it has the binder added. And it's not that it's bad, it's just different. But you would still brush it on the same. And if we do have some brush strokes, it actually is a good thing because it'll look more like wood with those lines made with the chip brush. We'll just get our sides here. Now, before we paint on our first primary color layer, I'm going to show you the resist technique. This is just going to be on the edges, and just because we don't want a whole lot of that base color showing, maybe 10% max, and we want it to be very selective on where we put it. We want to think about where would it wear naturally, and naturally it would wear maybe around the handle, you know, where you're constantly pulling it open and close, or maybe around the edges where it could get dinged or touched more. So what we're going to use is the light antique wax, believe it or not. And the wax is perfect because what happens when we have wax on our surface? Our paint won't adhere. It completely repels the finish. That's why waxes always last. But this is where we can use it as a resist method with the milk paint. So to do this, we need a brush. Now, the chip brushes absolutely are the best, and the uglier, the better. We want these kind of frayed, crazy hairs. And you'll take some in your brush, and you'll just like you're about to wax. But we're not going to offload it, right? We kind of want those clumps on there because it gives these more organic shapes when we go and distress it at the end. And we're just going to focus this, like I said, around the edges where we would want that wood tone to pop through. So we're being very methodical about it. And we're just kind of going to tap here and there, and you can do this motion like I'm doing, kind of the keeping it parallel and kind of sweeping. So just a little bit of that wax just gets left on the surface. Just barely touching it to get it on there. It doesn't have to be around the entire edge. You can skip some areas, maybe around the edges right here. And you could pounce it too, just along the edges there. Perfect, and that's all we need for right now. Now that we have our resist layer on, now it's time to paint the next layer. Now, the first color we're going to do is our lightest shade of our blue-gray, right? It was the last one that we made with 1 part Venetian brown, 1 part Amalfi Coast, and 2 parts Strasbourg white. And then we'll take our chip brush. And every time we're ready to paint, we agitate it again. This is important. Now, when I put the wax on, you're probably used to letting your wax come to tack. You don't have to wait for the resist method for your wax to come to tack. You can go ahead and paint right after you apply the wax resist. So now that we have this all agitated, then we're going to offload, not like we do with normal one-step. We're actually going to scrape just to kind of get most of that water out. And I feel like a lot of people leave a lot of that moisture and water in their brush, and that's why they're having problems with it puddling or dripping when they apply it. So we're just going to apply it the same way we did with our base layer. Long strokes, following the grain, making sure to get our sides. And I don't know if you can see this. See, it's already starting to resist where we put the wax. You see that? And even if it doesn't show right away, once it starts to dry down, even if it does cover the wax areas, once we start distressing, it will actually pop off and chip off like you see on my samples here. We'll brush that on. And if you're having any problems with dripping when you're doing it vertical, because let's be honest, you can't always lay something down flat to work on it. As long as you're taking most of that water out off on your brush and scraping both sides, you should be okay. If you still get some dripping, that's okay. Just catch it with your brush and try to let the chip brush absorb the water that's dripping and then repaint it on. Like just like that. And remember, milk paint, see how it looks like it's translucent? When it dries down, it becomes way more opaque than you're seeing right now. Just real quick, take that. That's it. Once you're done putting one coat on your entire project, you're ready to let it dry. Now that our first primary color layer is dry, we are going to use the wax resist again. This way, when we distress it at the end, we have this lighter blue-gray peeking through. And we'll get our light antique wax and our wax brush, and again, load it up. And we'll focus on the edges again. Just kind of pounce it here and there. Now remember, this is where the lighter color is going to come through, so it looks really good on these raised areas and that pops through. And then what you can also do is, let's say we want a little bit of that lighter color showing through maybe towards the center or towards the middle of the trim work, right? We can just pounce it like this, which makes a nice organic shape at the end that'll chip off. Or if you want to, you could even do just a light stroke of a brush vertically. Just like you see on some antiques, they have that vertical kind of discoloration. Whatever you think you would want that light color to come through like. So here I have a little bit right here, and we kind of want to turn our brush so we don't have the same shape everywhere. And that's good right there, just about that amount. And the next one we're going to do, so out of the three, we've already done our lightest blue-gray. Now we're actually not going to do the medium. Normally we would go from light to dark, especially if you're dealing with different colors. That's absolutely true. But when you're dealing with different shades of one color, you can actually kind of break that rule, and it adds some different, a difference in variation and color and texture and depth. So we're going to jump to our darkest color, which was our Venetian brown and our Amalfi Coast 1:1 with no Strasbourg white. And see, this is our darker gray blue, and we'll paint that on. Okay, now we have this mixed up, and I'll go ahead and grab my brush, and again I'm going to agitate this, and then we're going to offload the moisture in the water. And I did spill some right here, but no big deal. It'll just add to the look, probably be a happy accident. So again, we're going to brush it just like we would if we were following the grain. And you'll notice too, when you start doing these layers of milk paint, not adding more milk paint, it almost kind of dries in front of your eyes. Like the previous layer of milk paint is sucking all the moisture out of your next layer. And brushing again, the same direction, long strokes. And feather that out. All right, and we're done with that layer. So we're going to let this dry for a couple hours, and then we'll come back for our final layer of milk paint. just going to do circular motions all around our milk paint. And you burnish that, circular motions, up and down motions, sides, and all the areas that that wax was left for the resist layers will start coming off a lot easier than the rest of the milk paint that we're burnishing, like so. Show you that. See this right here coming through? See, this is where all the places that we had put the wax down at the base layer, that's now coming through. And you see how it's turning darker right here than the rest of it? Remember, that's where we had put the wax to resist that layer, so that layer comes through. And you want to keep doing this until you're about 90% done. See that beautiful chippiness with the lighter blue coming through? So you see that? You see all of our beautiful layers coming through? Isn't that incredible? And just hints of that wood tone from that little bit of wax that we had added. We didn't do a heavy amount, so we don't have a lot of it coming through, which is perfect. That's absolutely what we want. And one more tool that I like to do, just on the edges and here and there, just to give it a little more chippiness. This is a straight wire, hard wire brush. And this is perfect for making those little holes or those little chip-aways that you like. So all you do is you take this and you take this point right here on the corner and you just tap it on your space. Not a lot. We don't want to damage it, but we just want just a little bit here and there, like maybe on the edges. Just give it a couple good knocks here and there. Like I said, random, not too much. See that right here? See that nice chip away that we're getting to those other layers? Beautiful. Look at that. I absolutely love the look of that. And it creates a very organic shape. So this looks good to me. I feel like it's 90% done. And why I pick 90% is because you don't want to go too far and over distress it. If something happens and you do take off too much of a layer, or maybe you have too much of that wood tone showing through somewhere, don't panic. You can always take your milk paint from your other 3 layers, that blue, gray, and just take a little bit on your finger and then just paint over the area where you feel like it's too heavy distressed. And let that dry and you're good to go. It'll look beautiful. So now our next step is sealing the surface. Okay, now that we're done distressing, it's time to wax and finish our beautiful milk paint finish. So just take a lint-free rag just to make sure we get all of the dust off. Just do one quick wipe. We don't want that mixing with the wax. And I'm going to show you, I prefer to use the light antique wax with milk paint. I feel like it's just that perfect shade of just enough darkness and antiquing to add to it to make it look so beautiful. You absolutely could use clear wax, but with this finish and these colors, I absolutely recommend the light wax. So we're going to take our dedicated wax brush, chip brush. We're just going to load it up. Make sure to always offload. You want to spread it around on the surface, offload a little bit more, and we're always moving our wrist. And I don't have a heavy hand right now, just light, getting a nice even application of the wax on here. I think a lot of people too, they put way too much wax on. They feel like they don't have enough on their brush. You don't want that. You definitely don't want any of this clumping up on you. Perfect. And you can feel it with your hand. Make sure you didn't miss any large areas. Wonderful. Beautiful. Isn't that incredible? Now that our wax is dry, it's time to do our glaze. And this might shock some people because waxes always last, but there is something we can do after waxing that acts as a glaze. And if you look here, here's some examples. See, this side was done just with the wax, then this side was done with my glaze after waxing. You see how the difference in a darkness, how it turned a lot darker? Or for example, on this sample, see how this half was done with the wax and then this half is done with the glaze, just to kind of show you the contrast. Well, we can use this to do some shadowing, or you can fly speck it on the surface for some darker spots, or maybe you want to build it up in the crevices or make it look like it's water damage, you know, dripping down. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And to do that, we need to use furniture tonic. So I love furniture tonic. It's all natural, it's food safe. And because of the hemp oil properties in it, it's actually a drying oil. And what that means is it polymerizes into a solid form when exposed to oxygen. So due to its polymer forming properties, it can actually be used on its own or blended with other oils, resins, and solvents. In this case, we can use it on top of wax. So to do this, you just need an artist brush. You can either do a pointed liner brush or you can use the angled sash, just like this right here. So you're just going to fill your artist brush. Just make sure it's a tiny artist brush, unless you want to glaze the entire thing because you want the darker look like you see on my samples up here. And you just want to offload this on the side because we don't want it dripping. We want to be able to control where this goes. Just like if you were to glaze the one step and then wipe it all away and then leave it in the crevices for some shadowing, it's the same concept. So we'll take our artist brush and you're just going to follow in the crevices to do this, wherever you want the shadowing, wherever you want the darker areas. And you can use your pinky to guide you when you're doing straight lines, or just tuck your brush into the crevice like that. And then we'll do this side. We'll follow this down. Perfect. And then maybe we want some up here in the crevices to give this just a darker, little bit more depth and dimension. And you actually could use the furniture tonic as a sealant. You could actually do the furniture tonic first and then do the wax second for extra protection. Or you can just do the wax and then use this obviously as your glaze to darken it up. So we'll follow this down. And this will look very dark at first, but it will, just like with wax, it will dry down a tad bit lighter, but it will leave that nice shadowing. Loving this. So then after you're done applying your glaze, you're going to take your lint-free rag and we're just going to remove the excess. And this also kind of helps blend it. See that? Doesn't it just add so much more depth and the darkness in there? It's beautiful. So happy with this. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I love sharing my techniques and knowledge with my fellow finish artists, so I really hope you enjoyed watching. It was such an honor to be invited to this kitchen summit, and I would not be at this level if it wasn't for Amy Howard and her incredible products. So a big thank you to them as well. Thanks, guys.